What am I doing today? The same thing I do every day. Try to take over the fretboard world. And how we're going to do it, I'll tell you how. We're going to come up with a system that actually makes it doable, like by making a modal-centered system, and that will allow us to take over the world of the fretboard. Okay. All right, so let's break it down. We're gonna go back to here, and I'm just gonna keep on rolling through this with the lean back chords. And as I do it, I think I kind of want to try to work in the new thing that I'm kind of mulling over is like the chord naming conventions. I feel like I've kind of left that out a bit. So I still think it would be better to name the chords. The more that I watch like these jazz guys, and they're like, I'm trying to figure out what they're being taught and whatnot. It sounds like they're doing a modal-based system, in my view, and they're then interpreting the chords and having to code switch from chord names that are scale-based to modal-centered based thinking in order to play the proper progression over it. That's what I feel like is happening. So I would like to bridge that in my mind, and anyone else that think that's a good idea, you could try to bridge that with basically trying to think of it like the chords modally. I feel like it would be nice to name the chords modally, and I think it's really easy to do so because every chord is, if you just name the chord by how many notes are in it or the distance to the last note in the chord and the first note, then you can actually name the chord by the node that you're measuring from, and then you don't have to code switch between a chord that has no reference to the mode and then the mode that the chord is clearly referring to, even though it makes no reference to the fact that it's referring to a mode, right? And that would be a lot more specific. It seems to me you eliminate a lot of gray area. And sometimes you want the gray area. I'm trying to think about the counter argument, right? Why? Maybe you want the gray area, obviously, if you're saying, oh, it's just a 1-4-5 and I'm playing triads, and then you want someone else to just play whatever they want over the top of it. So I want the chords to be ambiguous. I get that, but it's still, I mean, you could still say that you want the ambiguity by saying, look, I'm not really playing a 1-4-5. I'm playing at 4 o'clock collection of notes around the key of C, and I'm playing the nodes of the 6, 2, and 3. It's not a minor 1-4-5. It's nodal point 6 Aeolian to nodal point 2 Dorian to nodal point 3 Phrygian. Now they're only triads, therefore because they're triads, you could overlay something other than a Dorian chord or a Phrygian chord. But that's the anchor that we're hanging the chords on, right? So that's I think if you were to name things that way, then it would be a lot more clear. That it wouldn't be like everyone's like kind of going, what exactly is in this guy's mind, right? It should be. I feel like we can clearly write it down a little bit more clearly so that we can see what's in the mind, right? Because then you can clearly say, well, okay, I'm still going to think about this as the same collection of notes, but I'm going to make it a Dorian chord. It's going to be like adding the what do I want to add, the 6 or something, which is kind of hard because that's all the way up. That would be the last note to add, right? So that would be like a 7-note Dorian chord or a Dorian 6 modal whole step chord, right? But I have an Aeolian shape on it, would be the idea, because I don't want the major 6, I want the minor 6, right? So I think that would be a lot more specific if you were to name it that way. Again, I know that's a lot to kind of but even just conceptually, that would make, if the structure was that way, then there would be less ambiguity, and any ambiguity you want that's deviating from the current thing, you can explain. I feel like it could be explained a lot easier uh, if we were doing a modal centered kind of system, which is what I'm obviously kind of promoting here. Okay, so I'll try to work that in as I go in my practice session, because that might not have made any sense. So let me say, but I'll make it make sense. It does make sense. It's just that I didn't make it make sense, but I feel like it did. So let's do a joke break, and then I'll go into it. I don't know what this joke is. This is I don't know if I was been very inspired with the jokes the last couple days, but hopefully the images make up for it. Let's see. IRS contractors. Okay, this is the IRS joke. If you're not in the United States, we have an income tax system here, and the income tax system basically works by the IRS forcing you to rat out whoever you pay, right? So if you pay somebody, you have to either make them your employee, and then if you make them the employee, then you have to take their money before they even get it and pay it to the government on their behalf. But if the government can't force you to make them your employee, then they still want you to give them a 1099 form, so that they know who got the money, so they can go after them. They need their social security number and their address, kind of like some crazy woke person doxing someone, right? They want you to rat them out. They want their address, social security number, name, any identifiable information, so they can go over there and cause hell, right? That's what the IRS does. So you're like, what? So when you're dealing with the contract, it's like, dealing with the IRS and contractors is scary, man. It's a scary business. Why? Because if you don't rat out your contractors to the IRS using 1099 forms, then it's your butt on the line. Then it's going to be your butt on the line, because then the IRS comes after you, which isn't good to have your butt on the line, because the line is really thin, like dental floss thin, an unpadded industrial strength line that you're sitting on. It's like sitting on a laundry line for long periods of time. You don't want to have your butt on the line, on that line, and it's not the soft rope kind. It's the wiry sun-baked 1800s prairie laundry line that they've got you sitting on. You know, sitting on that line for long enough will absolutely cause an indentation crease on your butt in a very straight, very official crease, like the IRS issued it, for crying out loud. One that is not supposed to naturally be there. That's not a crease that's supposed to be there, because you're sitting on the line for too long. There's no evolutionary reason for a human being to have a perfect horizontal tax bracket across their backside, for crying out loud, which is, of course, uncomfortable and unnecessary, and the difficult to explain at the pool, you know. And then it's like the IRS it's like the IRS's sneaky way of switching you, like an angry grade school teacher from the 1800s, you know, except that the IRS doesn't even need the switch anymore. They don't even need to hit you with a stick, you know. They just let gravity and time do the work, and eventually, because making you sit on the line long enough, it gets the exact same results. Slow, precise, government-approved discomfort. And the IRS has all the time in the world to make you sit on the line. It's going to be... So you best rat out your contractors, or it's going to be your butt on the line. That's what they sell you. That's how they do it. Anyways, I wrote a song about it.
Dealing with the IRS and contractors is scary. Paper stacks tall, the silence gets there. If you don't file those 1099s on time, guess what? Friend, it's your butt on the line. And that ain't fine. No, that ain't fine. 'Cause the line is thin, dental floss thin, no cushion, no mercy, no padding within. That's your old wire in the high July sun. You sit too long and the damage is done. It's your butt on the line. Yeah, your butt on the line. Not the soft rope kind you see in the yard. I'm talking prairie wire, sun-baked hard, like some 1800s fun
Put your butt on the line. Classy. All right. Let's see. All right, back to it. See if I'm in tune. I probably should have checked that before. Let's talk to Aura this time. Aura! 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 Aura's having difficulties. I think I'm trying to use the same chat, so she's getting... It's too much in her memory. She should be more like me. She should just forget everything. And she'd be fine. But no, she has to remember stuff. It must be terrible. Terrible situation. Aura! Aura! Alright, we'll let her think. She's thinking. Aura! Okay, now I can't hear you. I'll restart it again. One more time. We'll try it one more time. Aura. 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 I can't hear you. Is it supposed to be Era? I've been saying it wrong the whole time. Why haven't you told me? Okay. Something's wrong with the audio. Era? Who knows? I don't know. Okay. Let's try working on this one again. We're just going to continue on with the project. So we're on the 5th fret. I'm on the collection of notes around the key of C, which means that it's 4 o'clock, 8th fret, Ionian node right there. That means we go back to the 5th fret, and that gives me what I would call position number 1, which would be then... All right, I'm giving up on Aura altogether. I'm sad. It's disappointed. Okay, let it go. Let it go. So that's going to be position number 1, which you might call the Aeolian shape. The Aeolian shape or the Ionian G shape. Okay, so then I'm on the 3rd string down, which is the star of G on the 5th fret, which in collection of note at 4 o'clock, G is Mixolydian. So then I'm doing a lean back chord, which I'm defining as the 2nd modal half step or 3rd scale degree being in the lower left quadrant of what we're measuring from. That's what I define as a lean back chord. And then we're going to say that that means that node is we're in a Mixolydian. So it's going to be that's the long 3rd club or the wide 3rd club, meaning the 2nd modal half step 3rd scale degree is 4 notes away as opposed to 3 notes away. Okay, and then we have then the 5th, and so the 5th is, that means that the Dorian, the 4th modal half step or 5th is always the same long distance from every node in the system except for the Locrian, and therefore nodal point 2 is always the Mixolydian. Nodal point 2 is Dorian. Dorian is always the Mixolydian's 2nd modal whole step times 2, Mixolydian's 4th modal half step plus 1 Mixolydian 5th scale degree. Okay, and it has a long distance instead of a short distance, meaning it's 7 notes away instead of 6 notes away. There's only 2 options. And then we have the 7, the one that we're working on here. And although the Mixolydian is part of the long start club or the wide start club, meaning major club, that only applies to the third, really, because the 7 here we could see has a short 7. It's got a short, Mixolydian has a short 7, and so we know that the Lydian is always the Mixolydian third modal whole step times 2 6 modal half step plus 1 7th scale degree, which is a short distance of 10 notes away instead of a long distance 11 notes away. Now, the reason I'm also saying modal whole step is because modal whole step is how we build the chords, right? So when I say the set, like this, what we usually think about is the 7th, 10 notes away from the Mixolydian. I would like to name it. I'd like to name it by basically modal whole steps, meaning 7-note collection, skipping every other note, because that's how you build a chord. You've got each modal whole step in the collection means you can just keep skipping until you go from the root up 6 modal whole steps every other note, which gives you a 7-note chord. That's why I think that's a useful term, because that's the building block that you could put in chord construction that would make it really easy and straightforward and simplify the naming convention, which I have a whole course on, or section within the course if you want to check that out. And then modal half steps is, of course, scale degrees minus 1 if we don't renumber the system, so I don't have to make this 5 a 1 in order to name the distance, right? And then you have the scale degree. So that's why I have the 3 naming conventions. Okay, so now let's imagine that I'm going to go to, I think I left off on Locrian. So let's imagine we want to go to Locrian this time, because I went back this way. So I'm playing in Mixolydian, I want to go to Locrian. Now, why in the world would you want to go to Locrian contextually? If I'm playing in Mixolydian, why would I want to go to Locrian? I don't really know, other than Locrian has that really tensiony 5th on it. So maybe I want to switch to Locrian to get a very tensiony sound. Now, Mixolydian also has kind of a tensiony sound, though, because you're usually playing the minor 7 in it. So you're going to get that tensiony sound here or here. A little bit more tension than the major. So if I go to the Locrian, though, then I'm going to have what would be called the flat 5, or the short distance 4th modal half step 5th scale degree. So maybe I just want to add some tension. So I would think maybe like if you were going back and forth, Mixolydian or Locrian is kind of like the minor, because it has a flat. It has a flat 2nd modal half step 3rd, right? Or it has a 3-note away short distance 3rd. It's got a short distance 3rd on it. So it would be kind of like you're going from major to minor on the but instead you're calling it Mixolydian, because Mixolydian is closer to having a flat 7 on it. And then you could go to any of the minors, which would be Dorian, Phrygian, or Aeolian, but you could also go to Locrian, actually, because it has the same interval, and it has a 2nd modal half step 3rd that's short, 3 notes away, minor, and but it also has that one step away 2nd on it, which is also tensiony, and it has the tension of the tritone here on the 4th modal half step 5th scale degree. So that would be, so if you want, so you could go from kind of tensiony Mixolydian for a major to super tensiony Locrian, possibly, right? Yeah, I don't know. Could work, I guess. Sounds, I don't know. Anyway, that's the plan though. Whatever. So how are we gonna do it? Well, I could say where's the Locrian on the same string? There's one up here. So I could say so how would I find that? Well, if I'm on nodal point 5, it's going to be 5, 6, 7, 2 nodal points up. 6, 7. Now I know that 2 modal whole steps up, if I learn my formula, it's always a whole step between nodal point 5 and 6 because whole, half, whole, half. That means 5 and 6 is a whole step. 6 to 7 is a whole step. So that means that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 notes away. So, or in other words, we know that the 7 is 2 modal half steps up, which is going to be the third scale degree up. And we know that the second modal half step, or the Mixolydian second modal half step, third scale degree, is a long distance, or 4 notes away. So that means that if I keep my finger on the star of G, and I imagine the world spinning underneath it, that 7 and the whole shape rotating backwards, it would rotate back 4 ticks. So if I was at 4 o'clock, it's going to roll back to 0 o'clock or 12 o'clock, because 0 is equivalent to 12 in our system. So we're going to say 12. Once I do this, that my finger will not move from the star of G, but that planet will spin to a 7. Okay, boom. Now we're on the 7. So now I'm leaning forward into what I would call shape number 3, or you might call the Dorian shape, or you might call it an Ionian D shape from the caged system. And so that's where we're at now. So everything's shifted forward to that, and we're in the collection of notes around 12 is a G sharp. So Ionian would be G sharp, which is right after the G, right? So then, yeah. So then let's go back to 4, and then let's say, well, what if I only know it by like the top string? So I'm always going to look at the lean forward shape first to name my position. So if I know it from the top shape, I might call that a Locrian / Ionian shape, because that's where the half step is. So one of the 5 shapes then has 2 names because the half step's on the starting point of the shape. So that means, or I can call it an Ionian E shape from the cage system, or I just call it shape number 2. And that would mean I want to get that. So I could play this here as though it was the top of the shape. So if I know the shape up here, I'm like, okay, I know Locrian shape from here. It goes 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. No, you have to name it a 1 because it has to be a Locrian scale. Bull crap. You just go 7 to 7, 7 to 7, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's easy, right? That you don't have to make it a 1. And then you can just do that like over here. So I'm going to play like this G as though it was the top string of shape number 4, or the Locrian / Ionian shape, or the Ionian E shape. So that would be 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but then I have to shift it up because of the kink in the tuning. 6, 7. Okay, boom, shock alaka. Okay, so then if I imagine that moving down, what would happen? Every down tick is equivalent to 5 ticks to the right. So 2 ticks down is equivalent to 5 times 2, 10 ticks to the right, and then I'm going 2 ticks to the left. So that would be 10 minus 2, or 8 ticks. So if I'm at 4 o'clock, 4 plus 8, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 is once again 12. So that makes this go to 12. Now, if I imagine it now, it's going to do the same thing, but instead of imagining this 7 going back here, I'm going to imagine this goes down 2 ticks and to the left 2 ticks. It's the same thing because the shape is repeating. But that means that these 2 shapes are going to cross the warp. So they're going to go down 2 ticks to the left, but then 1 tick to the right because of the warp. They're going to be off by 1, right? So when I move it straight down, instead of going straight down, it's going to warp, right? So okay, just to keep that in mind. So there it is. Okay, so now let's analyze it from here. So now once again, we're here and everything's out of whack. So now these 2 are in the ocean. These 2 are in the ocean now. Why is that? Well, because now I'm on Locrian node. Locrian node is kind of like it would be in the short start club or the tight start club, meaning it has a short or second modal half step, or third minor, in other words, but it gets kicked out because it's crazy. It has a crazy 5th modal half step sixth scale degree. It has a crazy short fifth modal half step sixth scale degree. So it gets kicked out of the minor club, but it's still kind of like minor-ish on that way. Although they try to disassociate from him because he's like one of those really popular like political commentary guys. You're like, no, that guy's not with us. That guy's not with us. No. so you try. He cuts his hair a similar way. I don't know, but I mean, okay. So then we're gonna say, okay, so that means you're gonna say it's gonna be a minor third. So you got five notes between the string, 5, 4, 3. So we're going back here. So it would be back here. So now the Dorian, then nodal point 2 is always the Locrian first modal whole step, which is times 2 Locrian second modal half step plus 1 the Locrian third scale degree, which has a short distance, which is a minor, which is 3 notes away instead of 4 notes away. And then the fifth is also out of whack. The fifth is out of whack. That never happens. The fourth modal half step fifth is out of whack because it never happens because Locrian's the only one that goes short fourth modal half step fifth scale degree. It's the only one that goes short 4. Only one that goes short 4, short fourth modal half step, short fifth scale degree, flat 5, right? No one goes short 4. No one goes short 4. But that's why. So then if I was 7, 1, 2, 3, 4 is gonna be Lydian. So that's where the tension's at right there. Tritone, you can see one right there. Tritone shape. Okay, so then there it is. Okay, so that means that nodal point number 4 is always, which is Lydian, is always the Locrian second modal whole step times 2 Locrian fourth modal half step plus 1 Locrian fifth scale degree, which has a short distance, which is only 6 notes away instead of 7 notes away. There's only 2 distances it could be for each modal whole step, modal half step, scale degree, short or long. Let's not overcomplicate things. But no, there's 5. And then if you, in certain spelling contexts, there's more than 5 different ways that it could be. No. Check the DNA here. I think you've overcounted. Let's not overcomplicate things for no freaking reason. If we could, I don't like confusing people for no reason. I'm confusing people, but there's a reason, because I'm unconfusing people, and people talk like it's confusing people. It's like, no, I'm the one that's unconfusing people. You are the one that was confusing people, and I'm unconfusing. Okay, so then let's say that. So then we're looking at the 7. The 7 is still not in the ocean. So the 7's not in the ocean because, again, Locrian's kind of closer to the short second modal half step third club. And that means that, so that means it has a short 10 note away 6 modal half step 7th scale degree. So that means that nodal point number 6, Aeolian point, the Aeolian continent, is always the Locrian's third modal whole step times 2, Locrian 6th modal half step, Locrian 7th scale degree, which has a short distance similar to all of them that happen to be in the short start club, the tight start club, the minors 10 notes away instead of 11 notes away. All right, so there we have it. So could you even play that? That would be here. So then the minors over here, and then the 7 would be there. Right? I have to drop the 5. So if I go from Mixolydian would be here. But that doesn't include the 5, which is the weird thing that happens. That's right here. Okay, so what would I call that chord? Just out of curiosity. So notice if you'd have to call that a minor chord with a flat five. So it would be like it would be a G minor, a G minor with a flat five. That'd be a diminished, right? It'd be a D diminished, no, a G diminished of some kind, right? Or half diminished, G half diminished. See, it gets a little. I had it all down, then I got a little confused. So I'll have to get back to my chord naming thing. But the point is that I feel like if you just called it a 4-note Locrian chord, or even better, a Locrian 3-modal whole step chord, that would actually be more specific, right? Because what do? You take nodal point, you take the Locrian, and then you go 3 modal whole steps, meaning you take every other note in the collection of notes. So it would be 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that means you can define it as a 4-note Locrian or Locrian 3-modal whole step chord would consist of nodal point 7, Locrian, nodal point 2, Dorian, nodal point 4, Lydian, nodal point 6, Aeolian. And then if you drop something like the fifth, see this is what happens. This is why I have a problem with the currents. Like if I was playing this, right? I'm like playing it, and let's say I could grab that. Let's say I grab the fifth at the same time. Not sure exactly how to do that from here. Be like that, maybe. And then I drop it. So that means I would have to go, if I did that, I would be going from a half diminished, some kind of half diminished, I believe, because the fifth, it makes it so you can't really just call it a minor, because you don't have a normal fifth like everything else does now, right? But then when I drop the fifth, so that, and which almost makes me feel better, because if I say it's a half diminished, to me, my ear hears, oh, that's a Locrian chord, obviously. You have that's because that's the only one that has a flat 5 if you're thinking modally, right? But if you drop the fifth, then I can no longer call it a half diminished with a dropped 5, right? From a normal naming convention, because now the fact that I don't have the fifth in it means that I can't name it that way, right? And that means I have to go back to the normal naming convention, which would be something like it's a G minor 7 with no 5, dropping the 5, right? I can't call it. You don't really call it a diminished 7, a half diminished 7 with a dropped 5, because the 5 is the thing that makes it half diminished. So then you have to bounce. So then you see why that's a problem here. The reason I feel like that's a problem is because clearly the chord is built off of this node, nodal point number 7. So I would expect the chord name to reflect that. So if I say it's a half diminished chord, that makes sense to me, because that basically tells me it's a chord built off nodal point 7, right? That makes sense. But if you drop the fifth, or the one that's out of sync, I have to default back to major and minor, and now call it just a minor 7 dropped 5 instead of a half diminished 7 dropped 5, or something like that, right? So I mean, it would make more sense to me if we named the chord by the mode, right? If you don't see, because we keep on, like, the way the chord systems are working is basically you default to major and then minor, and then you go out from there if you have to. Next would be Mixolydian, I guess, and then half diminished, right? And then if anything happens to take it out of the differentiation of half diminished versus minor, you bounce back to minor, right? Or something like that, right? But maybe that's not true, because, well, yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I think that's basically, but that's, see, the problem with that is that when you're actually trying to play, I'm trying to focus on the nodal point that is the center. I'm not like, it doesn't make any sense if I'm focusing on nodal point number 7. Why am I using language that keeps defaulting back to it as though it was the Ionian? I should be emphasizing the fact that I'm building around nodal point number 7, even if I drop the 5. because I don't care if I drop the 5. It doesn't mean I'm not still building around nodal point number 7. And so I'm going to use language that sounds more like I'm building around nodal point number 6, right? So to me, it would make a lot more sense, whether I have the 5 or not, to call it something like a 4-note Mixolydian chord or a Mixolydian 3 modal whole step chord minus the 4th modal half step, right? Something like that if you want to drop the 5, right? It'd be like it would be a Locrian 3 modal whole step chord minus the 4th modal half step, right? Something. So I would think that would just make logical sense to me, because then you would name everything by the point that you're on and then the distance, point distance, right? Not like, I know I'm on that point, but I'm gonna like pretend that I'm gonna keep defaulting to the minor and then to the major if I don't have a difference in the intervals. To why? That makes it that okay. Let it go. Let it go. I'm gonna let's look at it this way. So now we've got our grid underneath. The world is flattened out, and it's the repetitive grid. We've got our constellation in the sky of the fretboard, and we have the 5th fret up, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3rd string down from the ceiling. That's from the constellation Star of G. And so now I want to make that's leaning forward into what I call shape number 1, or the Ionian G shape. I want to make it a Locrian. So I can see the Locrian on the same string over here, which is leaning forward into what I would call shape number 3, or the Ionian D shape, or the Dorian shape. And that means I'd have to move it back under the constellation, the Star of G, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm at 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock minus 4 ticks to the left would be 0 o'clock, which is equivalent to 12 o'clock. So we bring that back, boom. So now we can see that from the perspective of the yellow, I'm still 5 frets up, 3rd string down, Star of G, but the planet has spun, so we have the Locrian continent underneath it, and we can see from that continent the measurements to all the other relative continents and oceans are the same as they always are from Locrian, meaning anytime the 3rd string down from the ceiling is Locrian, we're leaning forward into shape number 3, which you might call the Dorian shape or the Ionian D shape. So let's say that I don't know that Locrian, but I know the Locrian on the top string right there. So that means I'm leaning forward into what I would call the Locrian/Ionian shape, or shape number 2, or the Ionian E shape. So if I did that, I'd have to go 2 ticks down and then 2 ticks to the right. Every tick down is equivalent to 5 ticks clockwise. So 2 ticks down times 5 is 10 ticks to the right equivalent, minus 2 ticks to the left. 10 minus 2 is 8. 8 plus 4 o'clock is 12. 12 is a G sharp if you make A1 and you just number the notes like any sane person would do if the music union didn't forbid it. You will not number the notes. You will not number the notes. And I have 1,000 other regulations that you also have to do it like that. Anyways, from the perspective of the orange, it's still 5 frets up, 3 strings down from the ceiling, still on the Star of G, still leaning forward from the perspective of the yellow now into the Dorian shape, which you might call shape number 3, or the Ionian D shape. But from the perspective of the red, you can see that the 3rd string down, leaning forward into shape number 3, is kind of the same as though it was the top shape of, like you were playing the top string of shape number 2. It's kind of like the same thing, you know. Let's check it out with a little bit more detail here. So now we've got we're still on, the whole constellation is over the planet now, not just our constellation of the fretboard. All the stars are in the sky, but our constellation is in the shape of a fretboard. And so now, once again, we're on the 5th fret up, 3rd string down, Star of G, which happens to be nodal point 5 at 4 o'clock. where we have the G shape, Ionian G shape leaning forward, or shape number 1, or you might call it the Aeolian shape. And then I want to make that star of G nodal point 7 or Locrian. So I could move this one 4 ticks back, bringing us back from 4 o'clock minus 4 to 0 o'clock or 12 o'clock. And because 0 and 12, so 1, 2, 3, 4. And there we have it. So there we have it. So now I'm still, from the perspective of the yellow, I'm 5th fret, 3rd string down, still star of G, but the planet underneath it has now rotated, so the Locrian continent is underneath it. And of course, if the Locrian continent is there, all the other continents and oceans are still in the relative position related to Locrian, because they don't move, because when the planet just spun around, it's not like we shuffle the continents and oceans around. So clearly, anytime the Locrian is 3rd string down from the ceiling, we're leaning forward into shape number 3, which you might call the Dorian shape. And now we're in the collection of notes around G sharp. You can see that because G sharp is the Ionian. Okay, so if I move that back this way and say now we're back at 4 o'clock, leaning forward in shape number 1, I have a nodal point 7 up here. So maybe I know that 7, because if I lean forward on that 7, I'm on what you might call the Locrian / Ionian shape, or the Ionian E shape from a cage system, or just shape number 2 if you number the first one shape number 1. So if I move that, it would be 2 ticks down, 2 ticks left. Every tick down is 5 ticks right, so 5 times 2 would be 10 ticks right, minus 2 would be 8 ticks, net 8 ticks. So, okay, so down 2, over left 2, netting to 8 ticks plus 4 o'clock would bring us to 12 ticks. See, and then I can say, okay, so once again, we're on from the perspective of the yellow, 5th fret, 3rd string down from the ceiling, leaning forward into what you might call the Dorian shape, shape number 3, or from the Ionian's perspective, Ionian D shape, Ionian now being on a G sharp, because G sharp would be 12 if you did the forbidden thing of numbering the notes. You must not number the notes. You must follow the pagan practice of using sharps and flats, and we carve sharps and flats into all of our stuff, and we worship the sharp and flat sign. No, you don't need those. You don't need the. They're not even like necessary. No, I'm gonna just if you just numbered it, you could no, you will not number the system. Okay. I don't understand the resistance. There's strong resistance to a basic fundamental procedure here. It seems a little unusual from my perspective. Let's go back and make this a 4 again. So back to 4 o'clock. Okay, so now at 4 o'clock, we are once again 5th fret, 3rd string down, star of G. But now relative to that, this one's in the ocean. What is that? That's the 2nd modal half step, 3rd scale degree, because it was on Locrian, and the Locrian 2nd modal half step, 3rd scale degree is more close to the short start or tight start group, otherwise known as the minor group, that has the 3 node away distance instead of the 4 node away distance, and the Mixolydian is the wide start or long start or major, which has a 4 node away distance. So we just pull that back because it goes from nodal point 5, 6, 7. And then we go to this one. The 5th is also off because, again, the Locrian is the only crazy one that goes short 4th modal half step, 5th scale degree. Short 4th modal half step, 5th scale degree. So everyone else is normal, and they would have the normal 5th over here. Okay, but the 7 is still in the same place because the Locrian does have a more short start group, meaning minor group, 6th modal half step, 7th scale degree, which is short distance, 10 notes away instead of 11 notes away, as does the Mixolydian, which, although part of the long start group or the wide start group, the major group does have a short start group related 6 modal half step, 7 scale degree, which is 10 notes away instead of 11 notes away. All right. So now we're back to that. Let's go then. One more. Let's go to the Ionian. So now we'll go to the Ionian. So Ionian's out here. There's one right below it. We haven't really gone up one. That would be the shortest way. But let's go this one first. So now I'm going to go to the Ionian. So if I'm on Mixolydian, how do I get to the Ionian? Well, if I go clockwise, it's like right in the middle, right? So 5, 6, 7, 1, 5, 6, 7, 1. So 3 modal half steps up. And I know 3 modal half steps up means that it's going to be 5 to 6. Mixolydian to Aeolian is always a whole step. Aeolian to Locrian is always a whole step. Locrian to Ionian is a half step because it's whole, half, whole, half. We're starting on Mixolydian. Therefore, it's not a new formula from Mixolydian. No, it's just now I'm at Mixolydian. That means I'm at the part of the same formula that goes whole step Mixolydian to Aeolian, whole step Aeolian to Locrian, half step Locrian to Ionian. Or in other words, I could say 5, 6, 7, 1. So it's a Mixolydian 3 modal half step or Mixolydian 4th scale degree. The Mixolydian 3 modal half step 4th scale degree has a distance of a short distance, like most do, of 5 notes away. So it's a 5 note away distance. So if I'm going to bring this back, it's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ticks to the left. So if I have my finger on the star of G, it's going to tick to the left. Now this one up here, what shape is this in? Anytime the Ionian is the third string, anytime the third string down from the ceiling is Ionian, that means I'm leaning forward into what I would call, once again, shape number 3, or the Dorian shape, or the Ionian D shape. So if I played the shape from here, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. And then if I imagine that over here, so I'm going to imagine this G as though it's the Ionian, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Whoa, wait a sec. That's not right. I have to put my second finger there. It would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Okay. And so then, I'm going to move that back. So if I move this back, so what's that going to be? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ticks to the right. I'm at 4 o'clock minus 5. That would be negative 1 o'clock, right? Negative 1 o'clock minus 12 would be 11 o'clock. 11 o'clock would be the collection of notes around the key of G if you numbered the notes A1 and just counted up. So 11 o'clock, if I hit enter, that I'm going to keep my finger on the star of G. That nodal point 1 is going to go right under my finger. Boom. There it is. So now third string down from the ceiling is Ionian, and I still have my finger on the star of G, but now the planet has spun so that now I'm leaning forward into what I would call shape number 3, or the Dorian shape, or the Ionian D shape. All right, let's bring it back to 4. And let's say I only know it from the top shape. Let's say I only know it from up here. So I'm like, okay, I see the Ionian up top, and that would be here, be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. So now I could say, couldn't I just play this as though it was the top string of shape number 2? I could, like, right, it could be like, that's like the second top string. It would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but then I have to adjust for the kink in the tuning. 7, 6, 7, 1. Okay, so then if I was to count that, why does that work? Because that would be like going 2 ticks down, which is equivalent to 10 ticks to the right, and then minus 1, 2, 3. So 10 minus 3 is 7, plus 4, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So that once again brings us to 11. But if you imagine the 11 this time, you want to imagine we're crossing the fault line. So instead of imagining this going back here, this is going down, which means these two strings are crossing the fault line, adjusting in a warp, because this thing is going to shift it to the right 1 tick, and then it's going back 2 ticks. Okay, so we're going to say there it is, or 3 ticks. So there it is. So we have that once again. Okay, let's do it one more time, because we also have more closely an Ionian right underneath it. So notice both of those ways I did it. Like if I was in a band and I'm like, okay, we're going 5 ticks counterclockwise, or 2 ticks down and 3 ticks counterclockwise, that's kind of a lot. The shortest way to try to indicate to the band that, like if I'm trying to do it in a sneaky way real fast, is to say it's 1 tick up. 1 tick up would be equivalent to 7 ticks to the right, right? Or 5 ticks to the left, I believe, right? So I could say I'm just going to rotate this 1 tick up, and that would be if I'm at 4 o'clock plus 7, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, right? So once again, that would bring me to 11 o'clock. So if I'm in the band and we're somehow have a sneaky signal, you have to hit the guitar like a couple times. You have to indicate direction. If the direction is down some way, you somehow indicate direction down, and then it's just 1 tick, instead of 5 ticks to the right, or right. We don't need no combination of ticks. So that would be, so you can get almost everywhere with very few like signals if you can somehow get the direction right, right? Down 1, right? Okay, so anyway, so then, what does that do? Well, we still have the third. The third isn't in the ocean. The fifth isn't in the ocean. So the third, because Ionian is always, of course, in what I call the wide start or the long start or the major club, and therefore the third, or the distance is 4 notes away instead of 3, as it is in the Mixolydian distance. So that means that nodal point number 3 is always, which is the Phrygian. Phrygian is always the first modal whole step times, is always the Ionian first modal whole step, the Ionian second scale degree, Ionian second modal half step, Ionian third scale degree, which has a long distance 4 notes away. The fifth is again always the same, except when you're on crazy Locrian, fourth modal half step, fifth scale degree is always relatively the same, so it's not in the ocean or anything. And that means that nodal point 5, Mixolydian is always the Ionian second modal whole step, Ionian times 2, fourth modal half step, Ionian plus 1, fifth scale degree, which once again is a long distance as opposed to a short distance, or a perfect fifth as opposed to like a flat fifth. And then the 7 is in the ocean. Why is that? Because Mixolydian, although part of the long start group, wide start group, the major group, has a short distance to the 7, meaning it's a minor 7, 10 notes away instead of 11 notes away. So if I was to get there, I could say, well, I'm looking for the 6th modal half step, 7th. If I'm looking at the modal points, there's only 7 of them. So I can go 6 clockwise or 7 minus 6, 1 counterclockwise. So if I'm at nodal point 1, 1 minus 1 would be 0 or 7, right? So it should be out here. That's going to be the 1. And so that's, if I count that out, 5 notes between the string, and then 10 this way because of the kink in the tuning, and then 11. So it's 11 notes away. All right, so that's cool. So then let's see. So that makes sense. So that means that nodal point number 7, Locrian is always the Ionian third modal whole step, the Ionian times 2, 6th modal whole half step, the Ionian plus 1, 7th scale degree, which has a long distance as opposed to a short distance, meaning a major distance or 11 notes away. So if I was to like grab that 7, it's a little more kind of, I guess, bougie or something, because usually the 7's like the lead in to go home. So it kind of works when it's high, but if you put the 11 note away distance and the low position, it's kind of, can be a little distracting. But anyway, so there it is. So what would we call that? it would be a G major 7, right? But and by calling it a G major 7, there's only two possible nodal points that it could be going from. That would be Ionian or the Lydian, meaning that you can view that from a modal standpoint as an Ionian or Lydian chord. It's ambiguous between Ionian and Lydian, not Mixolydian and not any of the minors, because the minors have a short second modal half step third scale degree, and the Mixolydian has a short sixth modal half step or seventh scale degree. But I would rather call it, if I'm on the Ionian node, that it's going to be a 4-note Ionian or an Ionian 3 modal whole step, because that's the distance that gives you the node that we're on. You could call it a G if you need to, but if you're at 11 o'clock, you don't need to. We're at 11 o'clock, and therefore I'm on the Ionian node, and it's an Ionian 3 modal whole step chord, right? That would be more specific, but you could say G Ionian 3 modal whole step chord, which means it's going to add the 7. Now, what if you drop the 5 like we did there? It would be a G Ionian. It would be a G Ionian 3 modal whole step chord minus the fourth modal half step, right? The fourth modal half step, which is the 5th scale degree, if you talk in distance. So I would always say then the first number after would be in modal whole steps, and then the next number would be in modal half steps, so that you can account for everything, right? That'd be quite easy. If you learned it that way, it would be, I think, way easier. But no one learns it that way. But I still think it's useful to think that way because it would be easier. So I feel like no one agrees with me, but that's okay. I will make my case because I'm still right, even though no one thinks so. I'm going to say, so then if I looked at it this way, so now we're at the collection, we're at 4 o'clock, 5 frets up, 3rd string down, the star of G. If I want to make it Ionian, then I could say here's an Ionian out here. So it's leaning forward into what I would call the Dorian shape, or shape number 3. I would have to move it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ticks to the right. And 5 ticks to the right would be 4 o'clock minus 5 would be negative 1 o'clock. And you can't have a negative, so 12 minus 1 would be 11 o'clock, which would be the collection of notes around G. So I'm going to bring this back. Boom. So now G is Ionian. And from the perspective of the yellow, we're still at 5 frets up, 3rd string down. Okay. Now, what if I don't know that? What if I was looking at it from the top string? I only know the Ionian from the top string, leaning forward into what I would call the Dorian/Ionian shape, or the Ionian E shape, or just shape number 2. In that case, I would have to pull this down 2 and left 3. Down, each tick down is equivalent to 5 ticks to the right. So 5 times 2 is 10 ticks to the right minus 3 ticks, 7 ticks to the right equivalent. So 5 plus 7 is 11. So we go here to Jute. And so now I can see from the perspective of the yellow, we're still 5th fret, 3rd string down, the star of G, but now the Ionian is under it, leaning forward into the Dorian shape, or shape number 3, which is kind of equivalent in thinking of it as though if the 3rd string down was the top string of shape number 2, or the Locrian/Ionian shape. And then the fastest way to get there is to recognize, well, where's the closest point? There's one right under it. The Ionian's right under it. So it would be fastest to say, well, I'm going to say that there's one tick up, which is equivalent to a 5th to the right, right? One tick up is equivalent to 5 to the right. I'm sorry, 7 to the right, or 5 to the left. So one tick up, you can see, right? If I go one tick up here, that's equivalent to going 5 to the left, or it's equivalent to going 7, here it is out here, to the right. So that would be the fastest way to get there. I can say, okay, we're going one tick down, which is equivalent to going 7 to the right. So one tick down would be 4 o'clock plus 7, 11 o'clock, which means collection of notes around G. So I'm sorry, one tick up. Whew. So there it is. Boom. All right. So now I can see that. Okay, let's see it this way. And so now we've got the whole constellation. We have the whole all the stars, and then here's our constellation. Once again, we're at 5th fret up, 3rd string down, putting our finger on the star of G. Now I see the Ionian out here leaning forward into shape number 3, or the Dorian shape. If I move that back, it would be moving back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ticks, which gives me to -1, 4 minus 5, -1, or 11, 12 minus 1. And we get right there, right? Okay, so now, from the perspective of the yellow, I'm still 5 frets up, 3 strings down, still the star of G, but now leaning forward into the Dorian shape, or shape number 3, or the Ionian D shape from a caged system. Bringing that back to here. So now I could say, okay, what if I can see the D from the top? I'm leaning forward then into the Locrian/Ionian shape, or the Ionian E shape, or shape number 2. Then I'd have to move it 2 ticks down, which is equivalent to 5 ticks to the right each, or 10 ticks to the right, minus 1, 2, 3 ticks to the left. 10 minus 3 is 7. If I'm at 4 o'clock plus 7, that gets me to 11 o'clock. So 2 ticks down, 3 to the right, and there we have it. So once again, from the perspective of the yellow constellation, 5th fret, 3rd string down, star of G, leaning forward, however, now into shape number 3, which you can see from the red is kind of equivalent as to though you were thinking of that 3rd string down like it was the top string of shape number 2, or the Locrian/Ionian shape, as long as you account for the kink and the tuning when you maneuver down with that one. And then, of course, lastly, we have the easiest directional way to get there. Would say I see it right below there. Therefore, I'm just going to move it 1 tick up. 1 tick up is equivalent to 7 ticks right, or 5 ticks to the left, right? So if I move it 1 tick up, it would be equivalent to going 5 ticks to the right. 7 ticks to the right, which would be 4 o'clock plus 7, 11 o'clock, or -5 ticks. Meaning if I'm at 4 o'clock minus 5, -1, and so 12 minus 1 once again gets to 11. So that's going to be, that's the idea. It's all beautifully organized. And then if you, if you were able, I still think it would be so cool if you had a drum circle with people that can really, do that, and then have some kind of subtle way to just tell each other, you're going 2 ticks this way and that way. I think that would be faster than trying to name the collection of notes that you're shifting to. So then you can pretty subtly get a fairly large group of people to maneuver modally more efficiently, which could be pretty cool. I feel like that'd be like a drum circle with pitch involved, right? That would be kind of. I feel like that would be neat. Maybe people are probably doing that. It's we've been doing that for you. Okay, but I didn't know about it. so I think it'd be cool to do that.